Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to our second episode of the Tech Unfiltered Podcast on MySmartPrice. And today we're going to be discussing Android 12, a really hot topic. And I have the perfect gentleman here to have that discussion with. So we have Mishaal Rahman, the editor in chief of XDA, and they were the ones who actually found those leaked screenshots. And which tells a lot about what we can expect from Android 12.
Thanks for having me on, Rashawn. Thanks for the quick introduction. As you all know, Android 12 is right around the corner. We saw some screenshots the other day. That's about as much information as we have, besides everything else that has been leaked. So I sadly can't tell you everything about what's coming in Android 12, but I can tell you a little more info based on what we saw the other day.
Sure, we'll get to that. And Rushil, I have a couple of other gentlemen who are also a part of the MySmartPrice team. So we have Shubhrajit and, of course, Rushil as well. So let's jump right to the discussion itself. Mishaal, it looks very different. I mean, it looks very different from what we've seen in the past couple of years. That's the first thing that we noticed. Tell us more about what we're seeing. Like the design feels like a complete overhaul, or maybe even before that, the legitimacy of these screenshots. If you can explain that.
What I can share right now is the likely origin of these screenshots is a document that Google prepared for its OEM partners. Because they release the next Android release sometime in August, but they have to give times for their biggest partners to get ready for it.
Okay.
So they do these presentations and they prepare these documents to distribute. These screenshots or these images came from one of those documents, and we don't know for sure if they're actual screenshots or if they're just design mock-ups. We're leaning towards the latter. Not all these screenshots were in the same section. So
Okay.
some of them were in likely a theming section. That's the most controversial one. The one where you see the quick settings panel pull down, you see the 4 quick settings icons,
Yes.
the radically different design.
Yes.
That one we think came from a theming section.
Okay.
And we think that is showing off what the background color will look like, what some of the shapes might look like if you apply a custom theme based on your wallpaper.
Okay.
Because there was another rumor from 9 to 5 Google a few days before this leak that Android 12 may augment the built-in theming system by being able to extract colors from your wallpaper and apply them throughout the system.
Interesting. Were there any traces of this in previous Android versions, or this is just purely specific to Android 12 and this is going to be happening for the very first time?
So theming in Android has been around for a long time, actually. It just hasn't been used by Google or anyone else for really that extensively, just because of so much fragmentation. It's
Right.
hard for Google to implement it in a way that will be widely accepted by manufacturers and accepted by app developers. It's actually based off of Sony's work with something called the Runtime Resource Overlay. And thing in Android 7.0 Nougat, Google introduced the updated version of Sony's theming engine to the source code.
Okay.
And then in Android 8.0 Oreo, it became accessible to people, so you could build and develop your own themes. And we actually saw a sort of mini renaissance of custom themes on Android Oreo because of an oversight that Google made that allowed anyone to install any theme they wanted.
Wow.
That theming engine is still there, and that's the basis of the Pixel Themes app on the
Yes.
Pixel phones, and that's the basis of this theme engine in Android 12.
I'm just gonna observe that this is like a major visual redesign that Android 10 and 11 was kind of missing. So I think the kind of things that we can expect from Android 12 would be a lot more than, the kind of things that we were expecting from Android 10, 11 from a pure consumer
No, but
point of
also
view.
talking about that, especially in India, we don't get to use too many phones with stock Android. So a lot of these features, we might not be able to try them out.
That's actually a good point. Mishaal, do you have anything to add to that? While there is the stock sort of, design theming engine that might come out with Android 12, how much of this will be actually adopted by, skinning, by other UIs?
Well, in terms of the actual overall look and feel, that is something that will drastically differ across the ecosystem. But in terms of core features, there are certain things that Google is planning to mandate across the ecosystem. So, for example, the privacy indicators for the microphone and the camera.
Yeah.
The document that I saw currently says that OEMs are required to implement those. So you would see those on Xiaomi phones, Realme phones, OnePlus phones that are running Android 12. Another feature that might be a mandatory inclusion in Android 12 is the new conversation widget.
That was possibly the most radical
I think-
design element that I saw.
And possibly the most useful. I
Yeah,
believe.
possibly the most useful one as well. So this looks very similar to what Windows used to do with their conversations, and I think BlackBerry had something similar as well.
I'm actually a little underwhelmed by it. I was hoping for a more drastic change to the widget ecosystem. I think that might still be coming. Basically, any notification that can show up in the conversation section of your notification drawer, it looks like Google plans to make that accessible in the form of a widget. And it looks like they're hinting at, it might support the theme engine. We don't know exactly what Google is changing to make that possible. Any widgets that currently exist might have to be updated, but it does sound like Google is not just ignoring what's happening in iOS.
But there seems to be a few iOS sort of hangovers that we can see over here, especially with the with, like you mentioned, that now that if an app uses a camera or the mic, then that sort of shows up immediately. So that seems to be, is it new or is it something that's been in the works even before iOS 14 happened?
So I don't know when that was introduced in iOS, but I know it's not new for Android. We first saw those privacy indicators back when I got my hands on a leaked Android Q build, Android 10, before it was released. And that functionality was fully present in those leaked builds, but they didn't make it into the stable release. So it's been in the works for at least 2 years now.
Rushil, what's your take on what you've seen of the screenshots till now? Like, what do you think of the new design? I mean, honestly, if you ask me, I feel that there's way too much white space. I saw a lot of people complaining about it, and I sort of am with them on that. But from my understanding, since this is a theming engine, I'm presuming that you can also reduce the size of each of those quick setting toggles and stuff like that. Rushil, your take?
So again, I would just say I'm just concerned at how many of these features will make their way onto the custom UI skins, because a lot of new things that we see with every Android version, they sort of become a pixel only feature. They're restricted to that.
But more importantly, I think Google might also go down the Apple way and try to enforce app developers to be as transparent as
Right.
possible. But then Google may also result. It may also result in Google losing out on its own practices that it employs, right? So I don't know how that will be resolved
What do you
the Android
mean?
12 build, because there's a lot of focus on
Right.
price.
What do you mean by its own practices? I want to understand that a little more.
I mean, I'm under the impression, as Apple has iOS 14 has showed that Google does kind of practice all the same shady data collection practices that Facebook and Instagram also employs. So I'm sure it's also doing the same on Android as well. So I don't know how those things will clash and how they will be resolved. So I'm very interested in that.
Mishaal, if you can add on to the privacy thing, that would be great. Like, what new privacy features do you see happening with Android 12?
So the new privacy features that you can see in the screenshots that I posted, besides the indicators for camera and microphone, there's also new toggles to disable the camera and mute the microphone in the privacy section of the settings. You could already do those
The kill switch
by
of sorts.
enabling the sensors off quick settings tile in developer options, but putting these two toggles in the privacy section makes it more user accessible. There was a report out from Bloomberg, I think earlier this week or last week. Sorry, time it just kind of
Flies by.
yeah. So
yeah, it's
yeah.
relative.
That report said that Google was in the early steps of considering what to do. Considering how early the talks seem, there's very little chance of those changes coming to Android 12, if at all. But yeah, Google isn't really a monolith. Like, of course, they have their search team, they have their Chrome team, they have their Android team, and they're all trying to do things their own way. And internally, they have separate teams who also want to do things. So I know there are a lot of people at Google within the Android team, within the Chrome team, who are very privacy focused, and they want to implement these anti-tracking measures. But then there are also, people on other teams who realize, well, how do we square this with our business in selling ads to people? So like one of the things you'll notice is like on Android, every app that requests it is granted the internet permission by default. It's not even a permission that you can disable.
Interesting.
So
Yes.
Okay.
that makes it
I did
easy for apps to connect to the internet, but you can see how that'd be a little problem if there's an app that wants to run like ad servers in the background, that wants to connect to something in the background. We've seen that time and time again. How does Google improve security and privacy for the user without impacting their ad business? It's a very tough challenge, and it's something they're grappling. I do believe that there are people who are working on it, and they're trying to find some solution, since their business model isn't the same as Apple's. Apple isn't like ad focused. They can go hard on these measures. Even though Facebook and big players like Facebook are complaining, Apple can do what they want because it doesn't impact their business as much.
Do you think that a lot of what we can see in the future, like you mentioned about the Bloomberg report, right, is also due to the fact that Apple is being a little strong on these privacy policies and fighting the big tech, that Google might have to actually do that sooner than we expect them to. Like you mentioned, Android 12 might not have all the privacy related features, but Android 13 will see it following the similar path as Apple.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's no way Apple and Google are ignoring what each other is doing. They definitely look at each other's releases and see what are some of the best elements that we can borrow, what are some of the trends we should follow. And I mean, Apple's measures are going to have a huge impact on the way a lot of companies do business online. And once Apple does it, it's a lot easier for Google to justify. I mean, they're just following Apple's trend after all.
Especially in India, when the WhatsApp privacy statement came out, everybody started taking that a little seriously, and there seems to be a more involved conversation now around privacy. So I guess even with hardware and whatever they're selling with the software attached to it, I think it becomes imperative for most bigger companies like Google and Apple to sort of be the forebearers of that technology. So now I'll come back to Android 12 itself and the design, right? What we saw, of course, even there was a change in the camera, the way the camera app is designed, right? Can you, if you can just throw some light on that, Mishaal?
I mean, that could be the new camera app that they're working with in Android 12, like the new Google camera app. I don't really know. I mean, they didn't really change much. All they did was swap around the position of the zoom icons. They used to be above the shutter button, but now they're on the opposite side. I don't know if that's actually a change they have planned, but that's basically all you can see that's different.
Like you mentioned, if the theming engine is going to be as extensive as we're looking at it, you can change icons, you can change the wallpaper, the transparency and everything takes from the wallpaper and stuff like that. I mean,
right. I personally wouldn't get your hopes up about how extensive the theming will be. Based on what I understand, the theming engine will expose certain properties to third-party apps, and it's up to those apps. It's gonna be like the dark theme, like Android 10's dark mode. It took a while for a lot of apps to adopt because they had to create their own versions of dark themes.
Yeah, so I mean, even when you're looking at it from that perspective, if it's gonna be like something that the third party apps have to do it from their end, in that case there's gonna be a very, it's gonna be disparate. The entire customization is gonna look so different. And again, then the whole bit about fragmentation and how Android doesn't look very uniform, eventually sort of that conversation crops up again if that's going to be the case. Any other point that we might be missing out on, Mishaal, that we should be discussing? Because I think this is all mostly what we've seen till now, right? I mean, do you think that the the 4 quick setting icons, like it's moved from 6 to 4 now, is that going to be like a standard thing, or maybe we might be able to change that?
That's not going to be standard. I'm pretty confident that the exact layout, position, and number of quick setting icons is going to be purely up to OEMs.
We've talked a lot about the overall facial changes on Android, but I think what kind of gets confirmed before the launch are the under the hood changes that Android brings. So I read a report on X3A about the new app hibernation feature that Android is planning to implement. So is there anything other than that, and or we can just talk about it more?
It's nothing too fancy. It's basically whenever an app is unused, the system will try to free up space by deleting any cached files. Because I know a lot of messaging apps, for example, like Telegram and WhatsApp, they store a lot of images and videos in like their folders. So if this clears those folders, it would save up a lot of space.
But then that also means you're losing out on that data permanently, right? Or is that
right?
Somewhere?
Yeah,
It's too
Stuart.
early to say.
I don't know for sure if it'll clear like all cached files or if like the app can choose which ones to keep and which ones to delete. But this is just one of the possible features, and we don't have all the details yet. Another one is the decoupling of emojis from system updates, which is actually like a pretty interesting feature. Because the way emojis work on Android, well, basically any OS, is that they're stored in a font file. They're just like a text file that you can open. The problem is, on Android, that font file is stored in a read-only partition. So what Android 12 will have is that there'll be a new folder in a read-write area of storage that you can place updated font files there, and the system will read from there as well. This will allow you to get new emojis by having the OEM or whatever system app push font files there without having to take a full over-the-air upgrade.
So is that also going to fix that whole emoji problem where some emojis don't really pop up when you're typing out if you copy paste it or something?
I don't think this will make emojis uniform across the ecosystem. You'll probably still have like different versions of the same emoji between Samsung, Google, OnePlus, etc. Some other features, there's an ultra wideband API.
Yeah, that's
phones with
interesting. I also read
ultra
that.
wideband sensors are becoming more. They're starting to pop up finally, but there's no way for third-party apps to actually use those sensors for their own tracking purposes. Like Tile is rumored to make an ultra wideband tracker. Another feature, this one was rumored from 9 to 5 Google, is that Google is planning to introduce app pairs, which is basically you can create a pair of two apps, and when you click on it, both of them launch in halves of the screen. You've probably seen that on.
That was before, right?
That's on
You've
Samsung.
probably seen it on
Samsung
Samsung, Microsoft Duo, Surface Duo. You've probably seen it on LG phones. Yeah, it's not like an original idea, but
Does this indicate that bigger phones are coming or newer form factors are coming? Maybe they're making themselves ready for it with these app pairs. That's what I can presume.
oh yes, I mean absolutely. They always want to support new form factors, and they're working on always new APIs to help people come up with ideas. Like this one hasn't been announced yet and hasn't been written anywhere yet, but in the source code, they're working on a new screen extension API. This is intended to help developers create use cases where you have one thing happening on one screen and you have something else happening on another screen. So for example, like a game has the game showing on the top screen, and on the bottom you have a gamepad. That's explicitly mentioned as one of the use cases.
Wow.
So that's something developers can do, but
Interesting.
Google is creating this API to help them realize that. It's not
That's
strictly
pretty
an Android
interesting.
12 feature. It's actually just coming to like their support library, so it'll be backported to other Android versions.
Don't you think that a lot of new features that we are seeing, there's a lot of new innovation, so they first come on to one of the custom skins like MIUI or a One UI, and then like even the dark mode, like a lot, like EMUI, even Huawei had it, I think the one of the very first ones, and then MIUI had it, and then later it made its way to stock Android. So that way, like Google hasn't been like staying ahead of the curve in bringing
That's a
out
good
new
point.
features.
But is that how Google works, though?
I mean, you
I
have to
mean, the
consider
Android
that there's separate teams. There's the Android team and there's the Pixel team. Pixel team they consider themselves an OEM within Google who build Pixel phones.
Okay.
They do obviously work closely with Android because a lot of the features they build end up having some form of it end up in the source code. yes, it's true that a lot of features that OEMs develop first, like dark mode, scrolling screenshots, eventually come to Android. But the difference is that OEMs don't have to care about how it's implemented by developers. And they don't have to worry about having it fully work. They just have to have it there. Google has to actually work to make sure it's usable by developers and it's actually implemented by developers. So it's not something they could have just like thrown in a dark mode, applied it to the settings, the system UI, and just called it a day. They wanted to have it adopted by the entire ecosystem. Google actually came out and said this during their Android 11 AMA, like why has it taken them so long to implement scrolling screenshots? And the reason is because they want to do it right. They want to make it so it works on every app that's scrollable, every kind of view that's scrollable. So they have to consider both their own devices, Pixel phones, and they have to consider the Android ecosystem as a whole, which makes it a lot harder and slower for them to adopt new features.
Yeah, I think we've exhausted our set of questions, and it was a great chat, Mishaal. Thank you so much for your time, and taking time out and taking us through Android 12. We're pretty excited about it. Although I think, hey, one final question: which Pixel phones will the Pixel 2 and the 2 XL have support for Android 12?
Oh no, it looks like Android 11 is only available for Pixel 2 and up. So it looks like Android 12 probably won't be available for Pixel 2.
Yeah.
So the 3 and the 3 XL, thankfully, if they do come, then I'm definitely
Oh, yeah.
going to run the beta, so I'm pretty happy about that. Great. Awesome, Mishaal. Thank you so much for your time. I hope, Rushil, I think we were more listeners in on this one, because generally it's like a conversation where we have it. Everybody's speaking, but we definitely did want to pick your brain. Thank you so much for your time, Mishaal. It was great talking to you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, Mishaal.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you guys.